Welcome to Champagne Problems Podcast. I am your host, Robbie Shaw. Join us as we explore mental and emotional well-being, physical optimization, and the journey to discovering your highest self. Champagne Problems is brought to you in proud partnership with Bond Buzz, the alcohol-free social spirit. Bond Buzz is an award-winning alcohol-free functional beverage company creating adult drinks that are health-forward, all-natural, and uncompromising. They're on a mission to create a future where feeling good and getting buzzed exist in absolute harmony and not at the expense of your health. Their bold concoctions offer focus and energy while calming the nervous system for a night on the town or a productive afternoon. Bond Buzz uses only natural ingredients and a hyperfunctional blend of nootropics, adaptogens, and functional mushrooms to amplify the sensory experience. If you're looking for a drink to help you cool off after work or a drink to stimulate your mind and body without the harmful, icky hangovers, drink Bond Buzz for good days only. Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got a special episode. We got the band back together, the death metal band. Me and Patrick, what would be our band name, huh?
Oh, God.
Vulture? Vulture Blood?
That wouldn't be the first one
That's
that I would think of.
Vulture eating vulture.
Oh.
And it's going to be our 99th episode. We've got a 100th episode coming out, obviously, after that. So Patrick and I wanted to get together and build up the anticipation for that one and do a reminiscent... what's that word when you have like something is nostalgia.
Yeah.
Nostalgia. So yeah, we're gonna kind of talk to each other and ask a couple of penetrating questions about each other's personal lives. Some of the past, some of the present, some of the future, and I think we're gonna start with rapid fire as we always do. So I'll start with you, and I'm going to do the question I always ask because it's my favorite question. What was your first live music concert and where?
It was Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, Hootie.
At Grady Cole Center.
Ooh.
Does that place still exist?
It does. It does. I saw fish there. Wow, Hootie. Hootie at Grady Cole.
Too. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
We're in the little, the second floor.
Yeah, where there's like four rows of seats.
Yeah, I don't remember much. I think it was like the first time I smelled marijuana, too.
Skunky.
Liked it.
Loved it. Delicious smell.
Yeah.
Speaking of smells.
Yeah, what's your favorite smell?
What's your favorite smell? Weed.
Yeah.
Favorite smell. Golly. I think there's two kinds of smells. One is like kind of memory jarring or again, nostalgia. And that's like the beach for me.
Strawberry shortcake figurine smell.
Right.
That was my favorite.
That's a good one.
That might have been one of my favorite answers ever on Rapid Fire.
Yeah. I like salty air. I like grimy marsh.
Oyster air.
Yeah, rotting seafood, like dock rot.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite smells.
Just put that into a cologne.
Dock rot. Robbie's dock rot.
Dock rot. Dock
rot. Do you read? Can you read?
I think.
Well,
I don't know.
If you can and do.
Maybe I'll try.
What book are you reading right now?
I've been on a James Hollis kick recently. He's a Jungian psychologist, probably in his 80s. The one that I'm reading right now is called The Middle Passage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about midlife and finally growing up.
From
a Jungian lens. It's pretty rich.
Sounds rich. I like that. We'll dig into some of that during our conversation. Because midlife is, that's where we are,
Yeah, it's highly suggested material.
Love it. All right.
What are you going to eat right before you get electrocuted?
Oh, God. All right.
Or gassed.
Man, I would crush some Chinese.
Yeah.
If it were my last
what kind
meal.
Of Chinese?
Man, I like sesame chicken, spring rolls, hot mustard, pork fried rice, bunch of soy sauce. That's
Have a
my
heart attack before you get electrocuted.
Maybe I'd go out. Maybe I'd avoid the electrocution by eating that meal. That's my like biggest comfort. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's out of town. I'm all by myself. I'm gonna watch a movie.
Mhm.
Chinese, man.
Where do you go? Where's your spot?
Bao Ding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's do the final one of if you could know the answer to any question, what would you ask?
Probably the one that
That everybody asks.
would answer all the other questions. Probably
right.
is like
What happens?
It's like, what is going on here? Like, what is this? You know.
That is so good.
It's just like,
I've got a question. I mean, what is this?
Yeah, like, what is this? Actually?
What are we doing here?
Like,
what are we doing here?
I mean, I just, it's like there's so many people that are so sure what's going on.
Oh, right.
And like, it's just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, where do we even start?
What really is going on here?
Like, what is this?
Golly.
What is consciousness? Like, what, I think we're so far off from even figuring any of that stuff out. It's like, how do we even pretend like we know anything when we don't even know, like, what the foundation is of what is going on?
So what if you went the other way and went pure, like, just matter-of-fact science evolution, like there is no mystery. It's just we just evolved.
Yeah, but even with that, you still.
How did it all start?
You still can't answer those questions.
No.
I mean, there has to be a framework to work from.
Yeah.
And it's like we just assume the framework.
Right.
Where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I, could sit down and know anything, I'm pretty obviously curious about that. And it's almost like coming all the way down into this like little explanation or whatever. But then once that happens and then it starts to expand all the way out into beyond everything that we've ever even thought we understood, I'd love to know some of that too. And maybe they're obviously together, but like, the cosmos and just
what are aliens
just
at?
the infinite distance. It just doesn't make sense. Like when you look at those graphics or those visuals of like, the little pinpoint Earth, and it just backs out and backs out and backs out and backs out, and it just.
I do believe that aliens are us from the future.
Aliens are us from the future.
Some of them are.
How does that work? Aliens are us from the future.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
See?
Yeah. Oof. Weird.
Like Interstellar. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies.
It's a good movie.
If that was your next question.
It was. It's already answered. All right. So I guess those were kind of rapid fire. I mean, maybe we just do some of that. Like, let's try to section this conversation into some of the stuff that we've learned, experienced.
I mean, so all right. So I can ask this stuff. Like, tell me some of your. We can go with. What have you learned since we started doing this about yourself? About.
Yeah, man. I mean.
What's been the most enjoyable?
Yeah,
going a bunch of different directions. What's been the most enjoyable part of this, or most meaningful part of starting this podcast? I mean, I can probably start and kind of tell the inception story because I don't know if anybody really.
Well,
or you can tell it. I mean, I don't really know.
All right, do that, and then let me answer your question.
Yeah. So, Robbie and I were out for lunch one day.
Yeah,
at the taco
mama
taco place, whatever it's called. And Robbie said that he was gonna write a book on all the problems with alcohol and its social acceptability in our society, and I thought that was awesome. And then we had lunch a couple weeks later, and he said that he tried to start writing the book.
Couple weeks.
And he sucked.
Gave up.
Sucked at writing. And he gave up, and somebody had suggested that he do who was that? Who suggested that you possibly do a podcast? Do you remember?
Oh, man, I'd have to think on that.
Give them some credit here.
Yeah, I know. Oh, it was Michelle Eichard. Yeah.
Shout out to Michelle Eichard.
Michelle Eichard.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, I've told her that too.
Yeah.
That she was the seed planter.
But anyway, so Robbie decided podcast was the route, and so then I guess you asked me if I would be on the podcast.
Yeah, I think initially it was like, you want to guest on it?
And I was like, yeah, sure. And then 20 minutes later, he called me as I was driving back to my office, and he said, hey, you think you'd be open to co-hosting it? And I was like, sure. And
we don't know what we're doing.
And I was like, yeah, this is never going to happen.
Sure.
And then,
sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, sounds good, pal.
Yeah.
And
what's your name again?
And then 2 weeks later, we got a bunch of cameras in front of us, and we're in a studio with lights, and
made it happen.
And it was real. And here we are.
That's right. That's right. A lot of in between then and now.
A lot of hard work on Robbie's part, and very little on mine.
Yeah, right. It's to answer your question, like I could go different ways, like one through the content and the guest, but also just the overall experience and journey. I think that's what I would rather focus on in that answer, because it has led to an entire shift in my entire life, professionally and personally, just by starting that podcast. I mean, getting in, like, what it requires to deliver a decent podcast is a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of putting yourself out there in ways that I've always been scared of. So essentially, like, kind of stage fright stuff, like being in just performance.
Your imposter
anxiety.
syndrome stuff.
Exactly. And even up until, God, probably fairly recently, I am always nervous before episodes. And I honestly think just recently I've stopped being nervous. Like, I just don't, I don't know. I feel very comfortable in front of the camera now. Now, we're talking 3.5 years later.
It's been that long?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. 3.5 years we started this thing, and I'm just now feeling like very comfortable in front of the camera. So that was a personal journey in itself. A lot of growth, a lot of maturity, a lot of, enjoyment in the process of being able to speak, I feel like, fairly clearly, and be able to generate thoughts and organize thoughts while their eyes on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hard part that I had to overcome. And that's been huge for my life outside of here and not in front of cameras and all that. And then, of course, it led to opening up this studio. So in a professional space, I've moved away from any kind of coaching and therapeutic work, and now I do full-on production work in the podcast and content space, and that is a whole new world for me, and it is so much fun, and I absolutely love it. I don't sleep well because I'm so excited to get to work.
Yeah.
And that's what the podcast did for me.
Tell us about that.
What, the production company?
What are you doing?
Yeah, it's called Everybody Studios. A lot of our listeners probably know of it. But essentially, I opened up our own studio to film Champagne Problems, and it was just to kind of move away from what we were doing before and make it easier and more affordable. And then within a couple of weeks, people were asking to use the studio, and then, of course, were asking me, hey, how do I do a podcast? And so Charlotte Cameron, our beloved partner in a lot of these projects, and I came together and decided to bring on our good pal Liz Bruno, and us three really started this whole production company was what it started as, and now it's become more of an agency, and there's a lot of strategy work. We do a lot more than just kind of this kind of podcast, a lot of content, a lot of marketing tools, internal communication and inside organizations like we do, and it's all audio video work and editing and strategy. So that's where Everybody Studios has landed, and we still do a lot of individual podcasts as well, and we're located here in Charlotte. We're looking to scale out. We're actually got a meeting next week about a possible new studio in Charleston.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
All from you and I coming together and starting champagne problems. Kind of cool.
I was thinking about that. Craig Evans, right?
Craig Evans.
My man. I've
Yeah.
known Craig my whole life.
Yeah.
That logo was one of the most exciting things. When I saw that for the first time, I was like, that's it.
It's so
That's
good.
really cool.
It really is.
Yep.
All right, flip it. Back to you.
What's been kind of my most memorable?
Yeah, I mean, I think your life hasn't necessarily changed and shifted as a result. Well, I'm not going to answer that for you, but you're not a podcast producer now.
No.
So, you know, what were some pivotal moments?
Well, probably the most enjoyable, the most meaningful thing that I've gotten out of this, obviously, was to get to know you more, and we become closer, and we don't hang out as much as we did probably in the beginning, but because of all this new stuff you're doing.
Uh-huh.
But get to know you and Ash and Finley and Lizard over there, and then really a couple things on the podcast front. One, just learning about stuff that I didn't know about, and this being a platform for that. But probably the most meaningful thing for me was just getting to know all of our guests. And totally. Connecting with them, and I've made so many new friends, and I've spent a lot of time with some of these people, and I stay in touch with them, and I can take ideas to them, and several of them have become pretty close friends of mine.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And we met here in the studio, or on the show, so. That's probably been my, the most exciting thing for me. Is just because I love that stuff too. I love meeting new people and getting to know them and connecting with them on a deep level. And we do that here on the show. We get to connect with them and really hear their stories and what their passions are. And if it's something that's in line with my passion, it's like instantly I'm like, I want to know this person more.
Yeah.
And connect with them more. So I've done that with several of our guests. And you and I kind of have different, passions are similar, but they're different in terms of what I'm really interested in. I'm more interested on the kind of clinical side and the more kind of spiritual and emotional stuff. So I've really connected with like the therapists that we've had on.
Yeah.
Or, those have always been my most exciting episodes with like, Tammy Valicenti and like Gabby and Brad Reedy. Stuff. The ones where I can really like nerd out and get into the weeds with them. Those have been probably my favorite episodes. But also meeting people that I normally wouldn't connect with on that kind of lens, but. Being open to a lot of the health and wellness stuff and learning more about that. It's been cool.
Love it. Yeah, that's been I overlook that sometimes. The amount of just not celebrity, but essentially celebrity, not in the traditional sense, but to us, like, like a Brad Reedy or something. It's like, man, that guy, like you hold him up to this standard or this level where it's like, holy shit, like this guy's a badass, and we have him on and talk to him.
I was listening to his podcast on the way over here.
The one that you did?
No. One of his. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing too. It's like these the people that we've had on their they open us up to their resources too.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce us to their friends, or introduce us to other content that we may not have been aware of. I mean, it's kind of split off into all these different paths. That's been really cool. Another thing that I was just thinking about that's been really, really neat is the people that I've met in Charlotte that have listened to our podcast
Oh, yeah.
too. I mean, that's been really neat to connect with a lot of those people, or be out somewhere and somebody will overhear me talking and they're like, "Hold on a second, I know your voice."
I know.
That's been really cool.
It's so funny.
Yeah, and really getting to know those people and listening to how the content from our podcast has impacted their lives, or
Yeah.
where that's come into play for them. So I love hearing that kind of stuff.
What's a challenge that you've overcome in the last, say, 3 years that is related to this work?
Probably just putting myself out there more, similar to what you've struggled with in
Mm-hmm.
terms of really being confident and having the courage to be honest on something like this, and walking through the fear of people seeing it and judging it, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, same thing as you, and I think it's definitely given me more courage to be more outspoken. I don't think I've acted on it nearly as much as you have in terms of putting myself out there, but one of the things that Anya, my wife, keeps trying to get me to do is to do some type of like recovery content, like Instagram page or some type of YouTube thing where I can go out there and talk about recovery stuff or clinical stuff. And I haven't pulled the trigger on any of that yet, but I think I have way more courage to do something like that than I would have before we did this thing.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
There's a studio that could help you with that.
Yeah, that's what knew you were thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, automatic. All right. Good stuff. So let's stay kind of in the space of, since we've are 99 episodes deep, let's stay in that space just a little bit before we move into more future and all that. Can you recall, I don't know, a couple different things? Something that blew you away, something that made you saddened, something that made you laugh, like throughout our many episodes and conversations. I mean, let's just free think these, because I'm gonna answer some too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot, and I can't really remember them.
I know,
like but we had so many fun times just with bloopers and just jokes on the side with you, me, and Sam, and just in the beginning, I think when we didn't really know what we were doing and where this was going and what to do, and the episodes were less. I mean, it was like, I don't know, it was kind of just.
It's probably worth bringing up Sam as well. She was an original member of our podcast. So shout out to Sam.
I'm sure she's listening.
She'll listen to this one, I bet. She was phenomenal, man. She was an integral part of the inception and creation of our first half of the existence of this podcast. She was amazing, and is amazing.
And anyway. Well, I guess when thinking about Sam, she interviewed me for my story episode,
right?
And that was really the first time, because I've told my story hundreds of times in AA meetings and public forums, but I've never had it recorded, that I knew of, and now I have something that I can listen to and reflect on and learn from and share with people if they're interested in knowing a little bit about my background. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing that with her.
Yeah. Well, you interviewed me.
Yeah.
Man, come a long way since then.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something, one that stands out for me, and there's obviously, we had different topics, and there's the recovery and kind of sobriety stories and journeys that we interviewed people on, and then there's obviously a lot of educational stuff, and then some athletes, some high performers that are super inspiring. I think Novak stood out as just such a brutal story.
Yeah.
I mean, every story is brutal, and I know that, but man, listening to his, I just because I've seen him and I've watched him like just come so close.
Yeah.
It's almost like, and this is an ugly way to say this, but there are people that pass away from the consequences of addiction, and the people who come close to passing away, I mean, that's the brutal shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the ones that pass away, it's obviously horrific and tragic and sad, but they're done suffering.
Yeah.
It's these other people that continue to suffer over and over and over and brush death over and over and over, that you're just like, oh God. And he was that for sure.
Yeah.
And now he's sober and he's awesome.
Yeah. I think that, the episodes that touched me the most were probably the ones that were geared around recovery stuff, especially on the younger side. Like, I loved our episode with William Burleson.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I feel like the ones that could have potentially impacted people in the most profound way. I'd like, Brenda Zane.
Yeah.
I love that. Anybody that's doing any kind of work with kids or parents of kids that are struggling with mental health, those seem to be the most meaningful or most kind of heartfelt episodes for me.
Yeah.
And then really one of the original purposes of the podcast were to meet people where they're at, anywhere on their journey, even people that don't really meet criteria for addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And the Annie Graces, being able to introduce, Annie Grace, Ruby Warrington, Laura McCowan, being able to introduce people to those types of resources, it's been really helpful for me, especially like in my clinical practice too, because I didn't know a lot about those people or about their work.
Mm-hmm.
And their online platforms, and I've shared a lot of that stuff with people, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah.
From the feedback that I've gotten, and people have learned how to moderate their drinking or cut out, try that, and then they decide to cut out completely, and it was outside of the traditional realm that you and I are familiar with, like in the 12-step world or even the recovery world in general.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool, and I think it broadened my scope of practice in my own clinical practice to be able to offer some of this stuff to people, and I didn't know it existed 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was impactful for me, and then hopefully other people.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
But in terms of funny stuff, I can't. I mean, a lot of that stuff was off camera.
It was
you and me just like making fun of ourselves and making fun of our guests. Behind
their backs. No, I know, man, and it's funny. Like, I mean, after 99 episodes, people know that we do have a sense of humor, and people who know me personally know that, like, my background has always been in the
stand-up comedy,
in the humor space, and I enjoy laughter more than anything else. And there's a lot of my friends that were like so pumped about this podcast, thinking it was going to be like super funny. Mm-hmm. It was going to be me like performing, in a way that I'd like always wished I could. And it turns out it's like this podcast is super vulnerable and sensitive and harsh at times. And while we laugh, there's not a whole lot of like really, really funny parts of it. It was always, even if it's a funny person, we're talking about serious stuff with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of my other really favorite episodes were, I really, really loved having Wes Carter on.
Yep.
That was, that opened me up to, researching a lot of plant medicine stuff, and I've learned a lot from that, and getting to know him and hearing his story, and I really felt connected to him on a deep level. Mm-hmm. And same with Brittany, Brittany from Cirque.
Yeah,
I
she
thought
was phenomenal.
That episode was awesome. I was very touched by her story, and
yeah, I think my one of the most meaningful ones I ever did, which was more recent, was Aaron Lazar.
Yeah.
And I know that was
It
without you.
was a good one.
And I went out to L.A. to do that one. If anybody's missed that, it was less in the recovery space, more than just the life journey and the fact that he was diagnosed with ALS 2.5 years ago, and what that was like for him and what it's like for him now. And I just in that moment and watching a man talk to me, looking at me like you're looking at me now, and talking about the probable death looming, and how you go about life with that in the back or front of your head now.
It'll definitely change things.
Man, it was powerful. That was a real. I mean, I just walked out of that one like that changed my life.
Yeah.
Like I just took a shift on how I go forward. That's some serious stuff. So let's back off the podcast a little bit and talk a little bit about I don't know, just some let's go with the midlife stuff. Let's go with how old are you now?
42.
42. I'm 47, and we both have kids. We're both over the hill, which I remember being such a phrase.
Don't say that, dude.
Yeah, but I accept it. And that's part. Okay, well then, if you want, then let's talk about.
Because I'm going to live forever. The tech's coming, Robbie.
Yeah. Because that's the part for me that has been so interesting as far as midlife goes.
It's going to download me into the.
Yeah. All right. Because I used to say that I hit midlife crises early on in my life.
Yeah.
And those were just pivotal moments in my life, is all those were. Those were not, the quintessential midlife crisis. And yeah, I mean, I do think I had a crisis, and a couple years ago when my wife and I separated, like, they were just things that created that conflict between us that didn't have much to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with us individually.
Yeah.
And when I finally recognized that, when she recognized that, and we came back together, there was this new outlook on life. And it was just all the priorities shifted, all the meaning shifted, all the purpose shifted. And I would say that's kind of what a midlife crisis, if you do it properly and you're open to the growth and the pain that it requires to overcome and move forward onto the other side of the hill. Man, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Super powerful. I think it has a lot to do with my comfort in the cameras, like starting a new company, like all that came after that event, year-long event, was hugely valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's usually what it takes, is some type of crisis to shake us and wake us up a little bit. But what...
So yours is coming.
Yeah, God, I hope not. I've already had enough of those. Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm doing a ton of, well, not a ton, but I'm uncovering a lot in therapy right now, and I'm working on a lot of stuff, and really kind of taking time to reflect and dig into, what made me who I am and why I am and how I operate in the world and how I show up in relationship to my wife and my kids and my work. And I'm actually, like, the idea, and I'll just give you a little background of, like, this book that I'm reading right now, The Middle Passage. And I've understood a lot of this stuff for a while, but I've never really gotten super clear on it, and I've understood it conceptually, but now I'm starting to really feel it experientially, if that makes sense. There's this idea of kind of a second adulthood, and that's kind of the middle passage, is moving from the first adulthood to the second adulthood. And the first adulthood is us, moving into our 20s and 30s and building this, like, ego strength and our personality in the world and our career and our
families.
Yeah, exactly. And then And then the second adulthood is when you really come to realize that you have no idea who you are, and that this this ego and this personality that you're showing up with in the world, it doesn't matter and nobody cares, and it's not really serving you anymore, and it's not going to serve you later on, as you eke towards death. And really, that's really why midlife crises happen, is because we realize the futility of this persona that we've created to really protect our souls and hearts, and this mask that we've worn our whole lives, and then how painful it can be to finally like take it off and really like strip down and see what's underneath all that stuff, and why you do what you do, and how dependent we are on other people, and what they think about us, and how that's been. It's a really kind of rude awakening midlife to realize that you've been living a lie for half of your life.
All right, well, let me ask this, because that's fascinating. But what if you were to read that as a 22-year-old?
Yeah.
Would it prepare you to not do that, or is the book saying that is a natural part of life and you should go through that?
It just depends. I don't know. I have no idea, because
Because I'd like to believe
I'm learning about this stuff now.
I'd like to believe you're not looking back saying,
yeah, I mean,
I screwed up.
I think a lot of this stuff, because all this stuff is about, it's developmental, psychology essentially, and I have this huge, it's almost like a calling to be able to understand this stuff, integrate it, and then articulate it in a way where a 22-year-old could understand it, or a 7th grader, and I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. We have to go through, I guess, a certain amount of suffering and struggle and trauma to be able to build the resilience and the strength that we need to show up in the world and not just crumble. So we have to have some of that stuff. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. So I can't really answer that question. I don't know. I mean, are there some 22-year-olds that could probably read this stuff? Or yeah, I'm sure there's tons of them.
Well, I mean, this is an incredible topic, by the way.
And I think they're getting younger and younger. I mean, because there are so many younger kids these days, and I see this in my practice all the time. They go 2 different ways. It's like, I'm either gonna like live this hedonistic lifestyle and hide from the world and play my video games and smoke my weed and pretend that outside doesn't exist and the future doesn't exist, which is what I did.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing.
Me too.
Until I was 28 and I got body slammed. But I think there's also a younger generation of kids that are really want to know the truth, and they're not settling for this like societal pressure to like be a certain way, to strive in high school, do what your parents tell you to do, go to college, get a job, make money, marry a woman and have 2.5 kids and build a house with a white picket fence. They're starting to realize that they actually have autonomy and they can do whatever they want, and they don't have to be shaped by their parents' dreams for them or society's norms, because they have access to so much information now. I think that they're starting to see that like this whole thing, like that whole dream of or structure of reality is not is a bad deal.
So I fully agree with that. I do think that whatever is, so a couple things. I do think that where they're shifting into what they're trying out now, which is different than that, is just another form of it. And I do think that there is a level of growth, emotional maturity, all emotional intellect, like all those things that just come with life that you cannot supplement it. How many times we look back at a younger kid and say, hey, just trust me, like do it this way. And maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they don't experience it the way that we would if we went back at 40 something years old and did it again.
Yeah.
So it's like this, there's no way that we can get them to skip steps.
Yeah.
Now, what we can do, to your point, is equip them for everything they're going to experience in life. And so you don't crumble, so you don't kill yourself, so you don't fall under, severe addiction and all these other ways of handling what everybody goes through in life and what's going to benefit you by going through it.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's possible. Like, I mean, and this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like, what is going on here? Like, I don't even know, like, if I took this information or if I gave somebody that book, and this is not the only book on this stuff, by the way, it just happens to be the one that I'm reading, but, like, you give a 22-year-old that book, there may be something inside of him that actually prevents him from being able to integrate that information at that time in his life. Like, just from an evolutionary perspective, to where, it's actually preventing him from understanding it, so he can go through those things, struggles that he needs to go through. So, and that's why the human experience, to me, and all of this stuff, I mean, it's so complex and there's so many variables. To me, it's not, a lot of times it's not even worth talking about, because
there's no sense to be made.
Even talking about this with you, I'm like, dude, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Like,
there's
it's
no
not,
pattern.
and it goes back to that idea of, like, we can only do the best with what we have and try to make this make sense and work. But who knows if any of it's, it's just, there's just too much going on for me to ever be able to know for sure. Like, and I deal with this every day working with my guys at Sauna House and in my practice. It's like, I don't know what's true for you, man.
Yeah.
Like, I tell people this, that are talking about going to treatment, or like, what do I do with my son? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you could pay $200,000 and send him to the best treatment center in the world for a year, and he could get out the next day and overdose and die. Or, he could go to jail for the next 6 months and then go into Charlotte Rescue Mission and stay sober for the rest of his life and live his life beyond his wildest dreams, and vice versa.
Yeah. No way to know. Yeah.
And if he eats Cheerios instead of Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
well, then
the day before,
then he's got a major advantage.
that might be the deciding factor of whether or not he succeeds. But there's truth to that. It's like, we just don't know.
Right.
It's too complex.
I'm glad you said all that, because it's just, everybody is looking for an answer. Everybody's looking for, a simple explanation, black and white. I mean, how many times have we answered that or been asked about, well, what's going to get them to stop?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
No
Sorry.
Idea. I know. Great way to wrap that conversation up, because I was just automatically in my head going into, these people that they say are old souls, and call it an old soul, call it genetics, call it, just a personality trait out of a million traits inside of that ever evolving brain of yours that help you not react.
Yeah, and this just made me think of one more thing that I wanted to say, like that kind of, like, awakening, or that shift in perspective, or, it can be, you never know how that's going to happen. I mean, it may take you 30 years of therapy to, like, flip the switch and, like, have this awakening, or it may be, like an ALS diagnosis, or this brush with death, or you hit a bottom, or you literally read a paragraph in a book and wake up the next day and you're just like, oh my God, it's and you're just looking at things with a new lens. It's just too, you never know.
Yeah. Well, and then
You
there's
can't
this.
control it.
No, you can't. But then there's also this timeline, or what would you call it, like linear experience, where you may have that awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and you may feel like the world has just shifted in your perspective, and then a week later,
Boom.
it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that heavy
Yeah.
or
It doesn't
important.
stick.
Yeah, it doesn't
You know.
stick, or there's no action, that follows up. Or I mean, yeah.
Should have had Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
That was the answer. All right, let's move forward into because we'll need to wrap it here
Yeah.
shortly. But let's go into kind of where the future is taking us. Let's start with you. I've kind of shared about my production company because that's really where I am headed. We can talk about, let's do your kind of professional space,
Sure.
and then the podcast space, and then we'll hug it out.
Okay. Yeah, I got a lot of really awesome stuff going on right now. I'm in growth mode I actually essentially have three entities that I'm working on right now. I have my counseling practice, which we're growing, and really what we want to be is the hub for families to come to in Charlotte to really get some guidance and some help navigating the treatment space, or really anything to do with addiction or mental health. We can kind of be that landing spot that can connect you with resources or help coach you, or consult with you or counsel you to get to get the answers that you're looking for. And if we don't have them, we'll gladly, plug you in with somebody that we think does. We have a pretty big resource network nationally, so that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, because that's been something that probably prevented me from getting help earlier. My family just didn't know what to do or who to talk to or who to turn to, so we want to be that hub where you can call and get somebody on the phone immediately and get the information that you need to make the steps to get some help or get your loved one some help. So that's really been a main focus of mine right now, is getting that. I mean, and we're that's Sonic Counseling, so we're here and we're ready, and we have been to help anybody navigate that. And then second thing is Sauna House. We're about a year and a half in, and for those that don't know what that is, it is a transitional living, or what we would call an aftercare program for men that are either coming out of addiction treatment, or residential addiction treatment, or they're in a place where they don't need residential addiction treatment, but they need to get out of their living environment. So we have, really, we have two houses right now, one in South Charlotte and one in the Cotswold area. That's kind of our phase 2 is over in Cotswold. But guys can come to us, and they can live with us in this house, and and get pretty much everything they need to jumpstart their recovery journey. We have 12 guys in our program right now, and we have 5 staff members for 12 guys. So we spend a lot of time with them. They do therapy. We have in-house psychiatry and medical support. We do a bunch of meetings. We hang out. We eat together. We have a lot of fun. We really try to just mentor our guys and really connect with them and get to know them and get to know the families, and help the families navigate all that stuff, and plug them in with the support that they need. And you can go to saunarecovery.com if you want to learn more about that. And we are actually in the process of expanding. We're going to double in size, hopefully in the next few months.
Beautiful.
So we'll have a house where we can have 12 guys, and then we'll have another 12 kind of step down, more like traditional sober living, but still can stay in our community. Really, what we just want to connect guys with with the resources that they need, and get them going on their recovery journey, and then build community and have them, stay within our community so they can help the next guy coming through.
Beautiful.
And then the third leg of our kind of mission is I have a 501c3 nonprofit called Sauna Recovery Foundation, and we're going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff with that in the community. Really, it'll be a fund where we can use funds raised to support other recovery related nonprofits in the community. Start any kind of awareness initiatives around mental health and addiction in Charlotte, but also be able to provide scholarship funds for places like Sauna House and even counseling practices in the area. If people can't afford our services, we can plug them in and help them financially, maybe find other sober livings or pay for interventions if needed, or pay for deductibles for treatment stays, or pay for treatment altogether if they need it and they kind of meet criteria for getting some financial assistance from us. But really, we're gonna be doing a lot of fundraising over the next year to kind of get that thing bolstered up and hopefully get an endowment going. And also it can generate some funds to really do some good stuff here in our community.
Sick.
Yeah.
Man, that's a lot more than you had going on a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I love it. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks, man.
That's big work, man.
And, I'm gonna be starting a new podcast.
Well, let's make a little announcement here. Yeah. So Patrick's gonna be kind of parting ways with Champagne Problems, unfortunately or fortunately. Let's just say fortunately. Champagne Problems has run a lot of different courses.
You'll be fine without me.
Yeah, I will be fine. I'm gonna continue on and do my thing with Champagne Problems and my production, and then you have an idea too.
Yeah, so one of my colleagues and best friends, Mike Jaminski, who was on Champagne Problems a couple months ago, he just celebrated 4 years of recovery himself, and he works closely with me at Sauna House. He's on our staff there, and he's the director of mentorship. But we're gonna be starting a podcast here in the next couple months. Digging into the heart and soul of life. And we're still trying to figure out exactly what we want to do, but it's going to be a lot of vulnerability, and we got some pretty amazing guests lined up, and yeah, I'm really excited to do it here at Everybody Studios and see what that thing turns into.
Love it. You and G-Man.
Yeah.
I'll listen for a couple of them.
You're going to have to. You're going
to produce it. What message would you like to send to our listeners about various things? And I do probably want to go back to where you and I were getting deep there for a moment, because I do think it's so valuable for people to hear just some level of guidance, whether it helps or not. I mean, often we're all going through something. We're all struggling. We're all on a journey. We're all, not necessarily in the depths of hell, but we're all, working at something and in the trenches in some area of life. And I think often we get curveballs thrown at us, obviously, sick loved ones and hurt loved ones and various other things, financial, relational, all these things that get thrown at us that we weren't expecting. And I learned this phrase in the rooms, but this too shall pass has always been something that works later for me. Early, it was like, God, what the hell does that mean? Screw you. That doesn't mean shit. This sucks right now. But often when I'm struggling, I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about the past. I'm thinking about what I'm going through now and how it's going to ruin my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a form of anxiety, an irrational fear, typically looking out into the future. And it's in 47 years of my life, it has never come true. My life has changed as a result of lots of things, clearly. And that's okay. But never has it really occurred the way that I was fearful of it happening. And so if I were to give advice to anyone out there that is just going through life, it's that. It's try to know that this will pass, and however you're thinking about it affecting the future to the degree that you're having anxiety over it, I don't know, dial it back and just try to get through it.
Yeah.
It's kind of vague, but
No, I mean, I think that's what this was all about in the first place.
how many times I've been through something that I felt was going to ruin my life. And every time it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it made it
Better. Yeah.
Even as tragic as the experience could have been, it made it better in the long run. Anything you want to say and put a period on?
No. I do want to thank everybody that's listened to the show. Because it kept it going.
Hell yeah.
You know, everybody that supported us and rooted us on and shared it with friends or family and loved ones and have rooted us on from the beginning and supported us. Thank you.
Thank you all. We still have a pretty heavy load of loyal listeners.
Yeah.
A lot of them have fallen off, and we've gained a lot of new ones. But, you know, as I watch the numbers, there's still a steady number that continuously listen to every single
bots.
episode. Huh?
It's the bots.
Yeah, it's about 12 of them. All right, brother. Hug it out.
Oh!
Give me some. I love you, man. Ugh. All right.
Fun.
Yeah, man. It's a wrap.